Hey everyone, my name is Doug. I run a company in Orem, Utah called Doug Johnson Productions, and I want to share some of my thoughts with you about the Blackmagic announcement that was televised this morning, broadcast live this morning. I also kind of do a summary of it. The actual video was almost 2 hours, long, so they covered a lot of products. And so we're kind of gonna go through it. Fortunately, they just updated their website right before I went live, so I can actually show you guys at least some images of some of this stuff. So this is going to be a live video, and I do have your chat window up in view here. So if you have questions, you can go ahead and ask me. One second, I need to turn off some speakers here because I'm hearing myself. I hope that takes... Nope, I'm still hearing it somewhere, but I guess we'll just have to live with it. So, let's go ahead and just start with the big one. They announced what is a brand new camera. They call the Ursa Broadcast. So this is very much in the same line as their other Ursa Mini products that they've announced. This is a camera that's specifically designed for live work. It's a broadcast type work. Hey John, good to see you on here too. This is basically what they've done is they've sort of taken the Ursa Mini Pro and swapped out the sensor with one that's more compatible with the B4 style lenses that it's designed to accommodate. It can still accept lenses with an adapter, one of their same of the adapters that the Ursa Mini Pros use, but you can still use your Canon EF, your Nikon F, etc. They didn't specifically mention it, but I assume PL would also work there as well. But the advantage this gives is you're not having a huge crop factor, because in the past they have offered a B4 adapter for the Ursa Mini cameras. And the problem with that is the B4 lenses are designed to produce a much smaller image than the image sensor that they have in the regular Ursa Mini cameras. And so what they've done here is they've come up with a new model that has the smaller sensor that's designed to accommodate those lenses properly. So this is something that I thought they should do for a very long time, and I'm glad they've done it. And kind of the cool thing that they've done here is they've actually priced it pretty aggressively at $34.95. So that's considerably less expensive than the Ursa Mini Pro camera that they've come out with. So this is a new step for them. It really brings a broadcast quality camera down into a much more affordable range. So I'm excited. I'm optimistic, but cautiously so. If you follow this channel, you probably know that I sort of have my qualms with the other Blackmagic cameras that they come up with. They tend to not do very well in low light, to the point where I can't use them in the sort of environments that I actually tend to shoot. So most of the events that I shoot, we're dealing with whatever ambient lighting they happen to have, and the Blackmagic cameras historically have not done well with that, even if you put a large aperture lens on the fact. My Ursa Mini, I have the Ursa Mini 4K, and I've tried using that a number of times, and even with a T1.5 lens, it just doesn't gather quite enough light in a lot of situations, and a lot of times T1.5 is just not ideal because your depth of field is so shallow that if you're shooting a person, their nose might be in focus, but their eyes are not. So it's really pretty difficult to deal with in a live situation. But I'm optimistic that this camera addresses that. I sure hope it does. I will probably rent one of these and try it out and see what I think of it before I commit to buying. Right now I'm not really lacking for cameras, but there are certain situations where having a camera with a B4 mount would be very, very much ideal. If we're doing a sporting event or something like that, it'd be nice to be able to rent a really long telephoto lens to put on one of those cameras. The big box lenses that you typically see and use in sports, there's no way I can ever afford one of those things, but those lenses would actually work on this camera. So it's a very interesting announcement that they made there, and it's something that I think they've needed very badly in their lineup. So if you're just tuning in, this is a live broadcast, and I am watching the chat room. So if you have a question, feel free to jump in there. That Ursa broadcast camera is supposedly available now. Of course, they always say that, and usually takes a few weeks for cameras to work their way into the channel. I think when they say available now, that means that it's available for distributors to order, and they can get their hands on it, and then we can finally, as consumers, finally pick those things up a few weeks later. So anyway, I am cautiously optimistic about that. Along the same lines, the other thing that they introduced are a couple products actually. They call these the Blackmagic fiber converters. These are 12 gig products. They go over standard SMPTE fiber cable. So this is kind of an interesting step for them. This really is they're really trying to encroach in on Sony's territory with this product. I mean, it's still kind of in a lower end vein than a lot of the stuff that Sony's doing. You know, Sony's got their high frame rate 4K and even 8K cameras now. This is not what Blackmagic is trying to do. But these do 4K. This does do 4K at up to 60 frames per second. And it does, like I say, it does use standard SMPTE fiber cable. So the difference between standard SMPTE fiber cable and the type of fiber that their other products have used and the type of fiber that I've used, it's not so much the signaling. The signaling is pretty much the same, but the difference there is that these are much larger cables that carry not just the video signals, but also they also carry power and a separate data connection as well. So you're able to power the camera remotely. So if you're working in a production truck or in a studio or whatever, you can power the cameras over that SMPTE fiber cable. This is very much not a budget-friendly solution. The price of their products themselves, you can zoom in here. So these are available. So the studio fiber converter, which is the end that goes in your studio rack or in your your production truck or whatever, and then this other unit here, the camera fiber converter, those are each $2,995, which honestly is an extremely aggressive price. You don't find anything that even approaches that in the rest of the video world. But this is a new thing for them, and it's still, even though it's more budget friendly, it's still outside the reach of someone like me. You know, because you're talking about $6,000 per camera channel. At a minimum, and that's assuming you don't have any sort of redundancies. It's definitely an interesting product, and they're very much going after Sony and Panasonic and some of the other players in the professional video world. The camera fiber converter product is really designed to attach on the back of the Ursa broadcast or the other Ursa mini cameras. It powers the camera directly. The SDI connections line up perfectly. You know, it's really designed to work in that area. They did make a point of saying it would work with other cameras, but it's going to be a little bit awkward. It's not going to attach to the back of the camera nicely, like it would with the Ursa products. So I'm somewhat excited about this. It's outside my budget, so it's not something I'm probably ever going to be able to bring to incorporate into my workflow. But it's a step that they're listening to actual professionals, and they're not just catering to, you know, the people that are buying the low-end switcher and using consumer cameras. So not that there's anything wrong with that. That's a fabulous market, and there's a lot going on there. But this is definitely them showing signs of paying more attention to pros. And I really have lukewarm feelings about that, to be honest, because I like the fact that they've been producing products that work for the sort of workflow that I have. You know, I've been able to build my entire trailer and my business around the fact that Blackmagic has made these products that are relatively affordable. But at the same time, it does mean that they seem to be stepping away. The thing that I was most disappointed about this announcement is that they have still not replaced or upgraded their camera converter product, which I rely on heavily. That's their traditional fiber to SDI conversion box. I use those very heavily in my workflow, and I've been very anxious for them to upgrade that to 4K, because everything else in that entire product range supports 6 gig SDI, and that one product does not. And so it's rather disappointing to me that they haven't actually addressed that just yet. So, so checking in on the chat room here. So wedding entertainment channel asking if they think the cameras will have enough resolution. I do. You know, the Blackmagic is typically not really suffered with resolution. These cameras are Ultra HD, and they are up to 60 frames per second. So they definitely are ready for the future. They also support HDR, so they do hybrid log gamma and BT 2020 and everything. So definitely relatively future-proof there. So Tarek says, Grant didn't talk about low light capabilities of the camera. I think they still have problems in this area. No good for events work. I definitely concur with you on that last part. No good for events work. Yeah, the cameras aren't sensitive enough to low light to be used in low light, or to be used for live events, unless you've actually been able to really light something professionally. We've done okay with like stage productions where they have dedicated lighting, but we don't know about the Ursa broadcast just yet. They didn't say anything about that. I'm optimistic that the camera will be better. So Robbie is asking if I'm going SMPTE fiber in the future. I don't have any plans to right now. The cost of doing SMPTE fiber is outrageous and just outside my budget, and it doesn't bring just having SMPTE fiber doesn't necessarily bring any huge advantages. You know, yes, you can power a camera over SMPTE. The breakout boxes usually have really nice talkback and whatnot, but I have most of those capabilities now. I can't send fiber. I can't send power over fiber, but the cameras that I use last for hours and hours on battery. So, and I got a ton of spare batteries, so that's not really a problem there. So, so do you expect that people to be selling the old camera converters in order to upgrade to the new stuff? So. Maybe, maybe not. This is really them Blackmagic stepping into a new market. This is not so much about trying to upgrade existing products or get existing customers to move forward. You know, their old stuff, you were looking at roughly $1,200 per channel per camera in order to send your video signals to and from a camera. With this new stuff, you're talking $6,000 per camera. So it's 5 times more expensive, and you do get some some advantages, and you definitely get some ruggedness and whatnot. But that's a huge cost for upgrading, and the other reason I can't do it in my trailer is power. You know, these things consume quite a bit of power, and I just don't have the power budget in my trailer in order to make that happen. All right, so Robbie is asking for thoughts on the new ATEM hardware controller. So let me actually pull that up. This is another cool product. I actually may be interested in this one. So this is the first thing they announced. This is a brand new hardware control panel that works with the ATEM switchers. So there we go. So this replaces their previous 1ME hardware panel. It basically does most of the same things with a few upgrades. I'll get to one of those in a minute when I talk about another product they introduced. But I actually think this product has some potential. It's much cheaper than the previous hardware panel that they had, but it's still a little on the expensive side. It's $29.95, so almost just under $3,000. At that point, it's maybe attractive to me. I'm gonna have to put some thought into that one. It might make some sense. It will definitely make my workflow a little bit easier. So I may consider that. But it has a nice big LCD screen on it there, so you can really see what's going on. It's fairly adaptable to different needs. So the top row of buttons there. It has multiple functions, and a lot of interesting stuff going on there. So, and it may be a product that I pick up at some point. Probably not just yet. Any earnings I have from gigs that I'm doing are going into other gear, but this may be one of those things that I can actually consider. For the previous panel at $5,000, I couldn't take seriously, but this one at $3,000 is one that I can actually consider now. So. Yeah, there is some interest in that. So Tarek says the new system is only for Ursa mini cameras. They will not update the camera converter. That's sort of my fear. I mean, they mentioned that the new fiber system does work with other cameras, but it is awkward, and they probably will not be upgrading the camera converter product. I wish they would, because it's a very glaring omission in the lineup of those products. But it very much seems that they're doubling down and basically telling people, if you want to use our fiber system, you're going to use our cameras. Which is the exact opposite of what that original camera converter product was for. That was very much designed to interface other brands of cameras into the Blackmagic system. So Tarek also says the ATEM panel is cool and the price is reasonable. Yeah, I do tend to agree with you. I wish it was like $19.95, so just under $2,000. I don't see any reason I don't see any reason that it should be $3,000. I still think they're charging a little bit of a premium on it, but it's an interesting product nonetheless. Now, speaking of switchers, they actually did announce a new model of switcher, sort of. They have a new model that they announced. I'll get to it here so you guys can see it. It's basically there we go. So it's basically the previous Broadcast Studio 4K switcher with a software upgrade. So it now supports 4 separate MEs, and each ME has 4 keyers on it instead of 4 keyers divided amongst 2 MEs. So that's quite an upgrade. And they're actually doing this they're calling it a new product. I think they're just basically relabeling the front of it. But anybody who has the original Broadcast Studio 4K, the 2ME one, they get a free software update in order to get the new capabilities. Having 4 MEs is something that I personally don't really need. I barely use. Maybe I've used the second ME on my switcher maybe once. I do have some other events coming up where that might be a possibility to take advantage of the second ME, but for third and fourth ME, not something that I personally need. I also don't need the 12 gig SDI capability. When I shoot 4K, I shoot at 30 or 24 frames, and so 60 frames is just not something that I personally need. All right, to go back to the chat room here. So Robbie's asking if I'm going to get an Ursa broadcast. I will not be buying one. I may try and rent one to see what it's like. I am still a little cautious about their low light capability. If it does work well in low light, I probably will pick one up at some point. Probably not right away. I'm not in the need for cameras at the moment. I've got more cameras than I ever used already, but it's definitely an interesting product. And then he also asks if I'd recommend the Ursa Mini broadcast for church that seats 1,400. That's a darn good question. If the church has a lot of lighting, it's probably going to be a good camera for that. But again, we just don't know about the low light capabilities. That's not an area where Blackmagic has historically done very well. So, all right. So Stefano from Italy, congratulations on your van. Thanks, appreciate it. You were realizing what I also dream about doing an alternative to Blackmagic if you considered the Simply Live system. We can address that in another video at some point. I'm fairly entrenched with the Blackmagic stuff, and the reason I've gone with that is because it does use the traditional SDI workflow, and so I can interface with should I get hired for something that goes out to broadcast or cable or whatever, I'm ready for it and I know I'm compliant. So. And it's also the stuff that I'm most familiar with. I've been using more traditional broadcast stuff myself for years and years. All right, so let's see. They are apparently still keeping their old 2ME hardware panel. They didn't say anything about that. It is looking a little bit dated compared to the newer stuff. The newer stuff definitely has a more modern design to it. I was hoping that they would introduce a 2ME product that was less expensive, because that existing panel is $15,000, and I can do a lot of other stuff with $15,000. So that's not been something that I've even considered, even though that does pair perfectly with the switcher that I'm using. I'm using the 2ME switcher of theirs. Let's see. What else is of interest? They are doing software updates on quite a few different products, although it does, mostly it's introduced compatibility with some of the new products. But as I mentioned, the high-end broadcast studio switcher is getting an upgrade to do 4 MEs instead of just the 2, and also to have. Oh, another interesting part about that one, not just 4 keyers, but they've dramatically improved the capabilities of the chroma keyer in that switcher. If anybody is watching this happens to use the chroma key feature of the switchers, you can bet that the new capabilities would actually make those keys look a lot better. So Robbie also says that he's disappointed about not updating that panel. I think anybody who's maybe interested in that panel is probably disappointed by the lack of an update on that. But it may still be coming. They may just may still be in the works. And then John says the broadcast panel would look great in the trailer. Yes, it would. It would fill out this space very, very nicely. I actually measured this front desk to make sure that it would. Well, I designed it so that that panel would fit here. Should I ever be able to get a great deal on one? So. Let's see, there was another product that they announced but it's not shipping yet. It's actually kind of interesting. It's basically a camera control unit, a CCU, for their cameras. So you get the traditional knob joystick thing, whatever they call it. It's like a T-bar for controlling the iris of the camera, and then a knob to control the black level, and then knobs to control your blue and your red gain and whatnot. So that's going to be $3,000 when it ships in June. For someone who's using the Blackmagic cameras, that's kind of a no-brainer. You'd probably just want to pick one of those up. For someone like me, where I'm shooting primarily on Sony, doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense. I would love to have those kind of capabilities, but until Blackmagic cameras actually meet my needs, then that's just kind of not an option for me. So, let's see. Those are really the highlights. Of the announcements, the one that I was most excited about was probably the hardware panel, because that's something that I could actually use, and it's close enough to being reasonably priced that I can consider it at this point. But the previous panel at $5,000 was really outside the realm of possibility, especially because I have other solutions that effectively work just as well, in some cases a little bit better. But yeah, the fact that they've introduced that new hardware panel, that's pretty exciting. And again, the biggest disappointment that I took away from this is they have still not upgraded their old camera converter product. So, and Tarek says the RCB price is very aggressive. It is aggressive. I wish it was more aggressive. I wish it was $2,000 instead of $3,000. There isn't even $1,000 of hardware in that thing. So. The fact that they're selling it for $3,000 is a little bit disappointing, but so yeah. You guys have any other questions? I assume some of you in the chat room. In fact, I've noticed that a few of you have made comments that you did watch the Blackmagic broadcast. But if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them if I can. Yeah, the thing that I took away from the broadcast itself is that they're really trying to step more into the professional market, be taken a little bit more seriously amongst the pros, and that's really where the new fiber products came from. They're trying to do basically the same thing that you're getting from your high-end players, your Sony and Panasonic and whatnot. So even Ikegami and some of those, but. Blackmagic has kind of a mixed reputation amongst pros. A lot of people see what they're doing and think, oh, that's pretty cool, but then reliability is maybe a bit of an issue, and the fact that they're priced so low means some people don't take them as seriously as maybe they could. And I think the new fiber products that they're announcing maybe do help them to step more into that market and to be taken a little bit more seriously there. And mentioned with the fiber converters that they use SMPTE fiber. The main problem with SMPTE fiber is the cost. I was looking online today, and I saw, I think it was like a 30-meter cable. Maybe it wasn't even that long, and it was $850 just for the cable. So if you're having to make long runs, cable costs can go through the roof. Even if you're running more than 100, more than a couple hundred meters or whatever, your Simply Fiber is going to cost you more than their converter products will. So, all right. So Mateo asked me what bit rate I'm streaming this at. I'm actually using an adaptive bit rate, so it's basically occupying whatever upload bandwidth I've got. It tries to do 6, but my internet connection is a little iffy for continuous 6 megabit uploads. What network switch would you recommend for use of the Blackmagic ecosystem? Any reliable one. So you can use. I use some of TP-Link stuff. It's not high end, but it does work, and I've never had any issues with it. So you can go with that one. Frank B asked, what do you think of JVC cameras? I haven't used a JVC camera in a long time, so I can't necessarily speak to what their current lineup is like. So Tara says they changed the ecosystem of their live production workflow using Simply Fiber instead of LC. They've definitely made that move, but I don't know if anybody watching this caught this, but on the back of their new Fiber Studio converter product, there was still the traditional Fiber SFP in there. So it's obvious they haven't walked away from their current Fiber solution, but they're definitely trying to take a step into the higher end Simply Fiber stuff as well. I've mentioned this on some of my other videos, but the Simply Fiber and the Fiber stuff that they've used, the signaling is identical. So if you have the LC Fiber stuff, all you really need is an LC to Simply adapter, and you can actually talk to stuff that way. So so Aaron asks, assuming that BMD doesn't update their camera converters, what will you do? I don't know what the next step would be, and that's kind of where I'm at. I'm not sure what I would do. Because there aren't any other products that are out there. My trailer is built around this idea of being able to send video over fiber. And the other issue with Simply Fiber is they don't come in multi-channel cables like I use. I'm sending 9 camera signals over 1 1/4-inch cable with my current solution. So yeah, I'm not sure what I'll do. I'm hoping that they will finally come up and say, you know what, we realize that there's still a need for this camera converter product in 4K version and update it. And it couldn't take them long to design it. They've already got tons of stuff that uses the 4K fiber. And Ted says Simply Fiber is great to coil though. Oh yeah, the stupid stuff is super thick and pretty rigid, and so yeah, it's going to be a bear to deal with. Personally, I would put it on reels instead of trying to coil it. All right, Wedding Entertainment Channel says, what do you use as an encoder for streaming? I use the VidiU from Teradek, the VIDIU. I wish I had gotten the Pro, but the Pro didn't exist at the time I got mine. But other than that, I've really liked it. Okay, comment. This new camera is nice, but when you add the cost of the viewfinder, the shoulder mount, mic mount, battery plate, it becomes expensive. That is true. The viewfinder is $1,500, the shoulder mount's $400, mic mount, I haven't seen the price on the mic mount. The battery plate's $100. By the time you add all that stuff and then put batteries on it, they use V-Lock or gold mount batteries, which tend to be pretty expensive, $200, $300, $400 a pop. Yeah, it does get expensive pretty quick. But if you're doing the Simply Fiber, you wouldn't need a battery on the camera. You'd actually power it remotely from your production facility. We use sheds at U of I. They're kind of a pain. Yeah, I assume so. So John, here to record, is asking, what's the rough cost of your current fiber spools? So pick it up. It's actually handy here. So this spool right here, 12 individual fibers. This is a 200 meter reel, so for US watchers, that's about 650 feet, a little over. So the cable itself was $750, and then the spool was another $200. So yeah, Ted says the fiber guy I talked to said Simply Fiber is roughly $4 a foot. Yeah, that seems. I think that's actually kind of a bargain price, to be honest. Like when I've seen it, it tends to be a little more expensive than that, and it does vary by length. The shorter ones, the connectors are pretty expensive. So the shorter cables, you're spending more money on the connectors than you are on the actual cable itself. So, and then Frank asked how I market my live streaming service. It's been 100% word of mouth. I've tried a bunch of other stuff, and none of it's worked. So I've done Google Ad campaign, Facebook and stuff, and they want to expand into additional markets to bring in additional revenue, I'm sure. So You guys have any other questions, especially about today's announcements? That's really the purpose of this stream. Anyway, bottom line is, yeah, Blackmagic seems to be trying to step into the professional market a little bit more than they have in the past, and you know, but at the same time, they did introduce that new switcher control panel, remote control panel. It's lower priced than what they've done in the past, so that's definitely a very cool thing. So if you have roughly 2 hours of time and you're interested in the products, definitely go watch their stream. It does get a little slow, so you may want to skip through some of the parts that don't necessarily apply to you, but it's definitely interesting to see Grant Petty, the CEO, talk about all the different products that they're introducing. So with that, do subscribe, like, etc. Appreciate you guys watching, and we'll talk to you another time.